talking to. I mentioned in a previous video that one of the methods I use to prevent squash bugs is insect netting. That's what you see here behind me, this like incredibly fine mesh that doesn't allow for any insects to get in, like aphids, squash bugs, cucumber beetles. In this case, I'm using it on brassicas. So we've got collards, kale, and broccoli under these because especially at this time of the season, we've got a lot of cabbage moths out there. Those like little light, white, delicate moths that look really cute, lay larvae that can totally decimate a crop, especially like a transplant that just went in. Working on an organic farm, we can't use any pesticides or herbicides, and so for pest management, that means we do something called I.P.M, or integrated pest management. And there are not a ton of ways to do that. So my favorite is the barrier method. And so a little bit farther down there, I have bok choy that's covered in a floating row cover. I call it Flow Roco, but it is like a fine, like a translucent cotton fabric that you can get. It's called agra fabric, and you can get it in many weights. And the weights will determine how much sunlight you can get through it versus how much temperature differential you can get from it. So like for winter growers, it's also a method of season extension. If you're growing tender crops late into November and then you're expecting a freeze, maybe you'll cover them with floating row cover. It might reduce the amount of sun that you get, but it makes sure that they don't freeze and that you can get through that night. Insect netting is something I prefer to use in the summer because it doesn't hold in heat and moisture in the same way as floating row cover does. This insect netting, because I needed it to be such an enormous size, we ordered direct from China. We got in like a big order with a bunch of farmers. But if you want to use insect netting at home on a smaller scale, I'm sure like there's places that you can purchase it online. You could probably buy it from Amazon. But it's a great solution for aphid or any sort of pests that are that you might not want to land on a crop and then lay babies and continue to decimate. But you have to get the barrier method on there right away. So as soon as I transplanted kale and collards, I put on hoops and went ahead and put on the insect netting. And then now I only take it off to weed or to harvest, and then we put it right back on. This floating row cover and Sluggo is another like I.P.M prevention that I use. It's the only organic certified pesticide adjacent item that we use, besides neem oil, and that is kind of for when things went too far. Last year we had an infestation of spider mites in one of our pepper tunnels, and so we used the backpack sprayer to spray a neem oil solution on things, and that made it so that we were able to get our peppers back. But integrated pest management is a big topic among organic farmers because we don't want to use pesticides. We don't want to reduce the biodiversity on our farms, but we also don't want to lose so many crops to insects and pests. Another pest that people think about a lot are like ground dwellers, so like voles, moles, gophers. And the moles don't eat vegetables, voles and gophers do. Moles create molehills, which take the place of the plants. So even if they're not eating them, they're still killing them. And so I'm still working on that one. I think I might train my dogs this year to go out in January and find like the vole holes and then set traps for them. But another method I'm really interested in exploring more is like cultivating a population of raptors. If you have a large rodent problem and you create like a raptor perch, then they'll be your best method of prevention. And I think that is like where I try to end up creating new solutions and thinking of solutions, is like, how does this work in nature? And that's a lot about how I think about integrated pest management is like in nature, all of these things balance each other out. And so we are taking things away from nature. How do we like get closer to what a like regular natural system would look like? And if you can't do that, then try some barrier methods.